All right, I'm going to call to order the meeting of MTA Bridges and Tunnels Committee. Do we have any public speakers?
Yes, we have 3 public speakers. The first is Murray Bowden.
Start off by saying, Danny, you and your team are excellent. There are limitations, but the people that you have working with you, super. That said, I want to talk about morality. Is it moral for Bridges and Tunnels to paint a double white line and then direct drivers to cross that line and then give them a ticket for crossing a double white line? It's not safe because you're not supposed to cross a double white line. But in fact, that's what you do at the Bronx Whitestone Bridge. You put in double white line to separate traffic going to the cross, whatever, and then the other is to LaGuardia. And you put poles up there. The poles are knocked down because people are crossing. Why? Because there's a guide sign there that says this is to LaGuardia and this is to Cross Island. There's 6 signs before it. You can separate the traffic before you get there and reduce people doing stupid things. Governor Cuomo said, reduce the silos. Transformation here at the MTA is communications. New York City DOT should be in charge of coordinating all of the lines and signs legally and honestly within New York City, and they're not. It's your responsibility to coordinate and use legal, recognized lines in the entire city to be consistent. That's what transformation is about. The MTA is leading the world in the next generation of public service. It's been a pleasure. One more. It's been a pleasure. You're leaders. And the next step is to coordinate all of the lines and signs within the city of New York to be consistent. And that's a difficult job.
Our next speaker is Charlton D'Souza, followed by Andrew Pollack.
Good afternoon. I'm Charlton D'Souza from Passengers United. And one of the things that I want to discuss with Bridges and Tunnels is that, are you guys included and participating in the Queens bus redesign? And the reason why I say that is because we have a lot of express buses that go through the Midtown Tunnel, and we also have express buses, that go through the Brooklyn Battery and all of that. And one of the things that I've noticed, I'm an express bus rider sometimes, and I know they have the bus lane on the LIE going inbound, but coming back home, we have to go via the 59th Street Bridge and then Queens Boulevard. Is there a way that Bridges and Tunnels can work with the MTA's bus redesign committee so that they could put outbound bus lane on the LIE and even in the Midtown Tunnel for the evening rush hours? Because I noticed in the evenings coming back, the traffic is horrible. Sometimes you're sitting in that traffic for like 20, 30 minutes over there, all the way up to the cemetery. So that's something that you guys have to work out. And also, I noticed that in the Bronx, the buses only go through, I think, the Whitestone Bridge. The other bridge that goes closer to Co-op City over there by the Clearview, you'll need a bus going up that bridge going into Bayside. Y'all should have a route there. I think that would be better because then you don't have to go through Flushing and stuff like that. So Bridges and Tunnels could work that out. And I want to ask you guys something. When people don't pay the fare, don't pay the tolls, how often do you guys go after them? Because there seems to be like a aggressive movement to go after turnstile jumpers, but when people evade the tolls, what's happening to them? I think the MTA needs to, send a public relations message to the media and to the public so we know what's happening to people who don't pay the tolls. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Andrew Pollock.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Pollock. I am a public advisor to Passengers United. Very quickly, I want to clarify Charlton's point about the other bridge. The other bridge that's close to Co-op City is the Throgs Neck, and this is something I know very well because I normally am on that bridge when I go to Delmarva, but I want to stick to what I really want to talk about today, and that is the Verrazano. What's been going on with the Verrazano Bridge lately? Well, I look at my tablet, and there was a sign changed. And guess what happened when that sign was changed? A lot of the buses, express and local, to go over the Verrazano were impacted that day. That work should have been done overnight, don't you think? Also, another thing with the Verrazano. I've been reading from newspapers, media's been talking about it a lot, that you guys are thinking of doing double tolling on the Verrazano Bridge? You basically now want to make people almost pay $40 to do a round trip between Brooklyn and Staten Island. I have family in Staten Island. This is going to impact me. I mean, I'm glad that my dad's an Easy Pass rider, don't get me wrong. But what about the other people who don't have Easy Pass? That's going to really, hurt the economy of Staten Island and Brooklyn, I think. So please really think about what you're doing, because it's very inappropriate to, make people pay the expensive toll to go into Staten Island and make them pay all over again to go into Brooklyn. That's just outrageous. So with that, I conclude my remarks. I'll see you all at Finance.
That was our final public speaker.
Thank you so much. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Any second? And all in favor? All right, thank you. Are there any changes to the committee work plan?
No changes to the work plan.
All right, I'll turn it over to Danny for the president's remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly with the two-way tolling, we're not doubling the toll at the Verrazano Bridge. Just wanted to make it clear. It's split tolling at the Verrazano. So good afternoon and welcome to the February 2020 MTA Bridges and Tunnels Committee meeting. An important part of B&T's mission is to provide financial support to mass transit, and I'm happy to report B&T generated a record over $1.1 billion in 2019 to support mass transit operations and capital programs. There is a committee action item today that distributes the operating surplus to New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, and Metro North Railroad in conformance with the New York State Public Authorities Law. Also this month, we'll be reporting on our annual customer environmental survey, and I will be speaking on B&T's diversity report. Another important part of B&T's mission is public safety. And in the past month, there have been 3 actions by our uniformed members of service which merit recognition. I will have Rich Hildebrand do the honors during the operations report to recognize these employees. If there's no questions, I'd like to start with the report on operations.
Thank you. I'd like to start today the report on operations by recognizing some recent actions, as Danny mentioned, by our TBTA officers. On February 15th, 2020, Sergeant Giovanni Saravia was patrolling the lower level of the Verrazano Bridge when he saw that a possible suicide jumper had exited his vehicle and was climbing over the side railing of the bridge. Sergeant Saravia immediately engaged the man and was able to pull him back to safety on the roadway. EMS responded and transported the subject for evaluation without further incident. Sergeant Saravia's swift and selfless actions prevented this man from jumping and saved his life. And we wanted to know that we are very thankful and very proud of him today. Thanks, Giovanni. On February 18th, 2020, contractors working on the Bronx-bound Throgs Neck Bridge observed a woman walking in the roadway. They notified the operations desk, and responding personnel were able to safely remove the woman from the bridge. The elderly woman was lost and had been reported missing by her family. Through the swift actions of TBTA Lieutenant Justin Vella, Sergeants Randy Rankin and John Anastasados, and Bridge and Tunnel Officer Joseph Cepeda, along with the staff of our Operations Command Center and our contractor partners at Judlow, she was quickly reunited with her family. So great work by all involved, and thank you. And finally, on February 19th, 2020, TBTA officers assigned to fare evasion duties on the M104A bus responded to a report of forcible touching with a possible firearm involvement at the back of the bus. The victim, a 41-year-old woman, identified the perpetrator, a 37-year-old man, and he was quickly taken into custody without incident by our officers Jamie Murray and David Rivera. This is a great example of the wide range of work performed by our officers to help improve system safety on our surface transit buses each and every day. So thank you, Jamie and David, for your quick response and actions. Great job. It's nice to be able to say some good topics for a change. The December 2019 report on operations begins on page 15. Paid vehicular traffic in December of 2019 was unchanged from the same month in 2018. Overall, 2019 paid vehicular traffic increased by 2.2% to 329.3 million vehicles, an all-time high for us. Preliminary figures indicate that traffic grew by 1.5% in January of 2020 as compared to the same month in 2019. Milder winter weather was a contributing factor. And unless there are any questions, this concludes the report on operations.
Any questions? With respect to the officers and others that you recognize, it's great to see things working sort of cross-functional, right? That if you're assigned to X, you can still have impact and help people by just being alert.
Absolutely, that's our goal. You know, system safety, no matter what the MTA agency is. So thank you, Chair.
Terrific. We'll now hear from Eric on the safety report.
Thank you. Customer collision rates continue to improve over the past 12 months compared to the previous 12 months. The 2019 total collision rate is slightly better than the 2018 and significantly better than in 2017. The collisions with injury rate in 2019 improved by 14% compared to 2018 and was also better 3 years ago. Employee contractor metrics are as follows. The employee lost time injury rate continues to improve. B&T recorded a 36% decrease in 2019 compared to 2018. The contractor injury rate increased in 2019. There was an improvement at year end with no reported injuries in November and December, the results of stepped up efforts to reinforce contractor commitment to safety. And that concludes the safety report.
Any questions? All right, we'll hear from Pat Parisi on the 2019 Customer Environment Report.
The Customer Environment Report begins on page 36, and highlights for 2019 include, as part of B&T's collision mitigation efforts and State of Good Repair program, B&T completed over 410,000 linear feet of roadway line striping, 8% more than in 2018. There were 1,966 potholes repaired in 2019, or 49% less than in 2018. A mild 2019 winter was a contributing factor. More potholes had to be filled in the first quarter of 2018 than in all of 2019. In 2019, over 96% of B&T's roadway lighting was in service, and 89% of roadway lighting is now LED, a 7% increase from 2018. Over 4,300 storm drains were cleaned in 2019, 118% more than in 2018. Peak period travel times in 2019 improved or were unchanged for the majority of B&T's time segments despite increased traffic levels. Notable changes in 2019 include significant overall improvements in PM peak travel times at the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge. Off-property Staten Island Expressway construction negatively affected PM peak travel times for westbound Verrazano-Narrows Bridge customers. There were lift bridge and ramp rehabilitation projects at the Rockaway Bridges in 2019, and average peak travel times increased by approximately 1 minute. If there are no questions, this concludes the report.
Mr. Schwartz.
BTA. Has the agency ever looked at best practices when it comes to roadway material and road construction? I mean, one of my issues is that we're still kind of like in the 60s when it comes to, you know, repaving or rebuilding roads using asphalt, which doesn't last very long in the kind of weather conditions that we have here in New York with thawing, freezing, and quite frankly, we lay down a new road and within one season, we're starting to fill potholes like left and right. have we looked at what other places either around the country or around the world are doing? It's not always to me the cheapest way of repairing a road. It's looking at value and looking at what we would get in terms of the longest useful life. Because otherwise, what we're doing is we're spending a lot of money and time filling potholes, and a lot of motorists are getting blown tires and bent rims and having to go to their insurance company. So have we kind of looked at new state-of-the-art technology or best practices to see whether or not there's better ways of maintaining our roads?
Well, I was going to mention, Pat had a great statistic there that we filled more potholes in the beginning of 2018 or 2019. And as far as the good weather that helped, also, I mean, Joe Keane can talk more to it, but as we replace these decks on the bridges, and we go with a lighter deck, a steel deck, orthotropic deck, once those decks are put in place, we're not paving them as often or at all for majority of the time that they have been put in there. Especially, I think about the Verrazano Bridge, which was done, Joe, about 3 years ago. But about 3 years ago, the Verrazano Bridge was put in, and I was actually driving over the bridge this morning, saying how we're going to have a project coming up in the next capital program to build up on the approaches to the bridge, and how the deck is so much different than the approaches. Basically saying what you're saying, old technology on one part of the bridge and new technology on the other. So there's a lot of capital programs that Joe and his team are looking at, these different ways of doing things. And you hit it on the head. Is the cheapest way or is it the best way? So you have to find that happy medium, but 100%, I think that one statistic really jumped out as far as the potholes that we're filling are a lot less than they have been because of what we're looking at.
And I think
in the
we're
future.
reaping some of the benefits from the work that Joe's team has done with the orthotropic decks, and we certainly are not up on the middle of the Verrazano filling potholes anymore.
And one of the projects that we're excited about is the Throgs Neck project coming up, the TN49 project. That's going to do exactly what we did to the Verrazano Bridge 3 years ago, is to replace that deck to help exactly what you're saying as far as potholes go.
I just want to reinforce, I'm an advocate and not just looking for the cheapest way, but the best value way, that has the longest useful life before we have to go back out and replace something or rebuild something or spending a lot of time, again, filling those pots. So whatever technology I got to believe is out there or best practices in terms of material or procedures on how to, redo the roads, that we're using those best practices.
Yeah, and I think Commissioner Schwartz's comment is well taken, because every time you have to replace something, it's an opportunity to see what is state of the art around the world. And not just, well, we won't have to do potholes as often, but there could be other opportunities. I think now, one of the innovations out there is they put some kind of coating or something into the surface. You can tell, you can gather intelligence about what's happening on the roadways and plan ahead. I don't know what the Thruway is doing, for example, in that regard, but I know that's an evolving technology. And just, it may be that you see an opportunity, and if you're concerned about, is it worth the investment, obviously you can appropriately bring that to the committee or to the board.
I would just add, speaking to Joe and his team, when we have regular meetings, one of the questions I say, okay, why are we doing this? Why is it costing millions and millions of dollars, and what is it going to give us? And Joe and his team, I have to give them all the credit. They do their homework, and they say this gives us a longer lifespan of the asset. This will help for traffic to go over more safely and smoother across our facilities. This will help these overweight trucks that you see now in the city, with Richie's help with looking at the enforcement piece of it, but also the kind of deck that we're putting in that can sustain these heavier trucks as they come over illegally, by the way. How can that help? It helps the wind aspect of the facility. So the overall asset, how does it help the overall asset, or has it improved the lifespan of that asset? So those are definitely questions and good points that are being brought up today.
Commissioner Lynn.
So one of the topics at the commuter rail discussion this morning was that there are certain topics that perhaps we should isolate and have special reports on. And I think this is a fascinating discussion that, Larry, you began, which is what is state of the art in a whole host of issues. I mean, we have lots of bridges in our city, but we're certainly not the only city by any means in the world that has lots of bridges. And so to the extent that there is international thinking about roadways and about design and about paint on the sidewalk and on the deck, as to how you move traffic from one direction to another. I think those are all fascinating questions. And if there are results that show, look, that we've done X and potholes are down by a certain percentage, maybe that's of international interest, what we're doing. But it seems to me that a presentation on what is the state of the art in the world and how we are embodying that and how we can contribute to that would be fascinating.
This afternoon, Joe is going to be highlighting in the CPOC, the Bridge and Tunnel Capital Plan, and I think a lot of that you'll see, it is the state of the art on what we're doing, what we're going to be doing in the next 4 years. So some of those questions may be answered, but we could definitely, break it down to what is the international standard, what is the national standard.
I think part of what's being communicated here is innovation is a critically important thing in all industries and in all lines of work. And we're just encouraging, maybe you have a person who's focused on innovation who briefs all of you, maybe you all keep up, but we're very interested in how innovation can help us with the daily challenges that the authority has in its work. And I'm sure that it's true across committees. So we encourage you not only to be spending time focusing on that, but to be briefing us about it.
Well, Madam Chair, we also have a Chief Innovation Officer marked out, and I would, if TBTA hasn't done yet, I would sit down with him. He's got a lot of knowledge and experience about best practices around the world and around the country, and he may have some knowledge, especially since he was involved with the Smart Cities Initiative once upon a time in his prior life. So I would seek his input as well. Can't hurt.
Good. Anything else? All right. We'll hear from Allison on the financial report.
Thank you, Commissioner. The financial report for January begins on page 46. Support to mass transit totaled $93.6 million, which was $13.6 million, or 17% better than the adopted budget. Toll revenue was $159 million, which was $3.5 million, or 2% above budget. The additional revenue resulted from better than expected traffic volume, primarily due to the mild winter weather. Total expenses were $37 million, which was $7 million, or 16% below budget. The favorable expenses the favorable expense results include lower overtime costs. Overtime for the month was 15% below budget. If there are no questions, I will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is an action item regarding the TBTA operating surplus. Okay. The staff summary begins on page 61 and includes an attachment of 6 resolutions, which are summarized as follows. And bear with me, please, because we have to read it exactly. Resolutions to certify and transfer $779.1 million in 2019 operating surplus to the MTA and New York City Transit pursuant to Section 1219A-2B of the Public Authorities Law of the State of New York, and resolutions recognizing $3.7 million in TBTA investment income as 2019 surplus funds to be transferred to the MTA in a lump sum as soon as practicable pursuant to Section 569C of the Public Authorities Law. And finally, resolutions pursuant to the Public Authorities Law to advance monthly the fiscal year 2020 TBTA surplus to the MTA and New York City Transit in an aggregate amount not to exceed 90% of the estimate of the sum of that month's operations, if available, with the first $1.8 million going to New York City Transit and the remaining sum split 50% to New York City Transit, less applicable bond service, and 50% to the MTA, less applicable bond service. Your approval is requested.
Thank you, Allison. Is there a motion to approve the 2019 TBTA operating surplus resolutions? Is there a second? Any comments or questions? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any recusals? All right, that carries. Allison, would you like to move on to the 2020 adopted budget and financial plan 2020 to 2023?
Yes, thank you. We also have as an information item the 2020 adopted budget and financial plan beginning on page 74. The plan includes some favorable technical adjustments to labor cost and debt service beyond what was adopted by the board in December, and includes a schedule detailing the monthly allocation of revenues and expenses for the purposes of reporting. Unless there are any questions, this concludes my report.
All right, we'll now hear from Joe Keane on the capital program status report.
Good afternoon. The capital program report begins on page 94. This month's report discusses both our January commitments and completions, as well as our overall 2020 planned commitments and completions. In January, B&T made 25 commitments for $17.1 million, compared to a plan of 23 commitments for $8.2 million. There were no completions planned or achieved in January. For the year as a whole, B&T plans to commit 124 tasks for $241.8 million and to complete 19 projects totaling $406.1 million. Planned completions include the new direct connector ramp from the RFK Bridge to the Harlem River Drive and a major structural retrofit at the Henry Hudson Bridge substructures. Planned commitments include painting and tolling projects and several design build projects. This afternoon, I'll be presenting an in-depth annual update on B&T's capital program at the Capital Program Oversight Committee, CPOC. Unless there are any questions, that concludes the capital report.
All right, our final item is the diversity report from our acting president. Dan?
Thank you. I just wanted to recognize Gwen Halston from MTA Bus. Gwen has been doing double duty for MTA Bus and TBTA as the Chief EEO Officer, so thank you, Gwen, for the last couple of months. The diversity report begins on page 100 of your book, and I'd like to say a few words about the importance of diversity at MTA Bridges and Tunnels. As acting president, my team and I are committed to the principles and practices of equal opportunity, diversity, and inclusion. Our organization was confronted with challenges in 2019 to manage organizational capacity while remaining focused on our diversity and inclusion principles. In the face of hiring restrictions, retirements, and other attrition, we conducted a series of functional assessments to ensure that we had the right people in the right jobs at the right time. In 2019, we were able to cross-train staff into new roles, creating opportunities for all Bridge and Tunnel employees, including women and minorities, to take on new jobs, fostering their advancement. In 2019, although we only hired 12 new employees, approximately 2/3 hired were female and more than 90% were minorities, well above the representation in the overall workforce. With minorities representing about 56% of B&T's workforce, or 1% higher than in 2018, and females representing about 21%, which is unchanged from 2018. B&T's ability to maintain its workforce diversity is a testament to our commitment to a diverse workforce. And I'd like to personally thank Commissioner Lacewell for her assistance in helping B&T improve our outreach, recruitment, and retaining efforts at this agency. So unless there are any questions, this concludes my report.
If there are no questions, that concludes the B&T committee report. Is there a motion to adjourn? Actually, I'm sorry, before we vote, Mr. Commissioner, do you want to say anything about the timing of the Finance Committee? At 1:15, we'll start the Finance Committee for those. Sir?
You addressed one of the questions that our public speakers had about the tolling on the bridge. The other question is that we don't want to leave it unanswered, that we don't go after people who don't pay the tolls. Could we have just a quick,
Yeah, just quickly, we have a robust mechanism on, I hate to say the word going after, but enforcing our toll efforts at bridges and tunnels, which include a legal aspect and an enforcement aspect. And I could go into detail or I could give you more information.
No, I don't need, I just wanted to be made public that it's not a free ride.
Definitely not.
All right, motion to adjourn? Second, we're adjourned. Thank you.